Hey, Molly, welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's just start by you just sharing your story with us.
Yes. So, which part of it, the personal or the professional side?
I, I want to hear both, actually.
So I guess up front, I am a follower of Jesus. I'm a wife to John. I am a mom to Lily and Amos here on earth and Elijah and Malachi in heaven. And I am a blogger full time. I've been blogging since 2007. And I am also a podcaster. My podcast is called Business with Purpose, and I launched that in September of 2016. So a little over about 2.5 years ago. And yeah, and I am just really passionate about ethical fashion, and purchasing with purpose is what I call it. I'm really motivated to share the stories of artisans here and abroad, and talking about empowerment through employment. And I am also a former improv and sketch comedian by trade. I taught high school English for a couple years, so my story is a little unique, but it is all just kind of part of the foundation of where I've gotten to of how I've gotten to where I am today. Yeah, and I spend my days just really trying to. I don't like to say the word balance, but I don't really know another other word to use. But just kind of, I guess, toggling back and forth between my roles as a wife and a mom and a business owner. And yeah, I'm super thankful. And I just love that I get to do what I'm passionate about for a living.
So cool. How old are your kids?
So Lily is 5. She turned 5 in August, and then Amos will be 3 in February.
So cute. I have a 5-year-old son, so I love this
Yes.
age.
Yeah, it's a really fun age. But it was funny. I was telling my husband this morning, um, so Lily is super, super bright. And I mean, I know every parent said that. She's so bright. She's really smart. But there's these like little quirks about her that I'm just like, is this a 5-year-old thing? Like, what is it? Like, yesterday we got home from school and I'm fixing the kids' lunch. And I was like, Lily, do you want chicken nuggets? Because, I'm frozen chicken nuggets. I'm mom of the year. Or do you want a sandwich for lunch? And she's like, oh, mom, I want chicken nuggets. And I was like, okay. So then I turned to Amos and I was like, Amos, what do you want for lunch? And he's like, nothing. Because that's what Amos is doing right now. He just doesn't want anything. And I just have to like bribe him to eat food. Um, and meanwhile, Lily's like eating us out of house and home. She's like, can I have multiple lunches? And yeah. But anyway, so I was like, okay, that's fine. So then I said, well, I'm making Lily chicken nuggets. Lily, you still want chicken nuggets, right? Like I said this like 3 or 4 times where I was like, you still want chicken nuggets, right? You want chicken nuggets? You're going to have chicken nuggets, like multiple times. So I put the chicken nuggets in the microwave. I start the microwave to make the chicken nuggets, and she flips out because she wants a sandwich. And I was like, what? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, I didn't say I wanted chicken nuggets. And I was like, yes, you did. You literally said it like 4 or 5 times. In fact, I looked at you multiple times in the eye with the bag of chicken nuggets in my hand going, you want chicken nuggets? And suddenly she no longer wanted chicken nuggets. She wanted a sandwich. So
It's got to be a 5-year-old thing because my kid is so weird with food. He'll go through like weird like phases. So we live in France, and all he wanted was croque monsieur, which is like a grilled cheese with ham.
Monsieur.
But he literally wanted to eat it breakfast, lunch, and dinner for like 2 weeks straight, and now he doesn't want anything to do with them. And then he'll just be like, "I just want to eat lettuce and cucumbers and clementines for dinner." I'm like, "What?"
Hysterical.
My child.
Yeah, Amos is basically a rabbit when it comes to eating. Like he eats like carrots and strawberries and pretzels. Like,
Oh my gosh.
that's, I'm like, I make them a smoothie every day. So I'm like, I just like sneak vegetables and other fruits and stuff in there. And then some days he'll turn around and he'll eat everything. But anyway, yeah,
So
I didn't
funny.
come here, I guess, to talk about food, but it's just a fun thing about 5-year-olds, or I'm just like, is this a phase? I don't even know.
I don't
So
know, 5-year-olds. Well,
hilarious.
I read on your About Me page, and I actually copy and pasted this because I like when I read it, I was like, I cannot wait to talk to Molly. So you said, while I love being a red-blooded American, a large portion of my heart is in Africa, more specifically Kenya, and
Yes.
even more specifically a little village called Kiria in Kenya. I've been twice and dream of the day I can go back. I actually lived in Kenya
Oh,
back in
wow.
2008 in a little town called Maua in Meru province. So when I read that, I was like, my heart has been in Africa since like
Oh, yeah.
2008.
Yes. Yes, it is a country, it is a place that just truly changes you and for the better. But yes, yeah, it's my second home, I like to think of it.
Absolutely. Tell us about your time in Kenya and what you were doing there.
Yeah, so my first trip, I've been 4 times now.
Oh,
I've lost
wow.
count. So my first trip was in 2011, and our church, it was just on what I thought was a regular mission trip. And our church actually partners with an organization called the 410 Bridge. And the 410 Bridge is just an absolutely incredible nonprofit that they started in Kenya, but they've now expanded to other countries. Haiti, Guatemala, I believe also Uganda. I think have they expanded to India? I can't remember, but they started in Kenya. And what they do, their whole goal is to come alongside small villages and communities in these developing nations, and they identify areas in which there is whether it's apathy, lack of resources, lack of education, where these areas are in need of discipleship. They kind of identify what are the things that this community needs, and then rather than, I could talk about this, it could be a whole nother conversation for another day, but rather than kind of just giving them handouts and giving them money and doing things for them, what they come alongside them to do is, and they also have in-country employees, so people that are native to that area, know the specific needs, and obviously know the language, so it's not a bunch of like, hey, we're some rich,
Mm,
Americans coming in telling you how to do things.
yep.
They partner with people there, and they say, okay, how can we come up with a strategic plan that is either 5, 8, or I think 10 years, and then they set some goals along the way, and the eventual goal, the goal is to then come alongside them and support them in those goals along the way, whether it be through, education, employment, discipleship, all those things. And then the ultimate goal is to be gone out of that community so that the community can then be self-sustaining. It's a really incredible organization. Anyway, so our church partners with for the 410 Bridge. And we started by partnering with this little village in Kenya called Kiria, and it is at the base of the Aberdare Mountains. It is just absolutely beautiful there. It's about 3.5 hours north of Nairobi.
You were close to where I was then. I was probably like 6 hours north of Nairobi.
Yes. And a lot of it is just roads. Like it's
Yeah.
not actually like that far, but it's like these muddy, rocky roads that are impossible to drive on. Oh, it's
Yep.
rough.
Driving through rivers and
Yeah, we call it getting a Kenyan back massage when you
yep.
arrive in the car
Sounds
because
about
it's just
right.
like, whew, it's rough. Anybody who gets car sick, I'm like, yeah, you probably don't want to go on those drives. They're not fun.
No.
But yeah, so we were going. It was I don't know if it was our church's second or third time going, but it was my first time. And we were there 10 days, and that particular trip was the goal was to work on some school improvements and also building a fence, because they were having a lot of issues with theft. They were having a lot of issues with unwanted wild animals coming in and eating crops. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, things like elephants and lions, you have, like these animals coming in and eating their vegetables. And this is a farming community. So that particular trip was just kind of coming alongside them and supporting them in that. And then obviously working on discipleship. But it was truly, I know that people say that after they go on mission trips, but it really was a life-changing opportunity.
Mhm.
I was able to connect with a girl that we sponsor there, and I just really felt like this was becoming a family. So then my husband and I actually went back after we got married. We went back to Korea in 2012. So that was the first trip was summer 2011. Then we went back in 2012, and just continued to develop those relationships. And I'm actually happy to say that in the summer 2016, we released Kiria, and now they are fully self-sustaining. They met all of their goals, and it was like really sad because we were no longer going to be going there regularly. But it was such a thing to celebrate because we met the goal that we set out to achieve, was that we would go in, we would support them, come alongside them, empower the local leaders, empower the men and women in the community, empower the kids, and then to eventually no longer be needed. And so we were no longer needed. They're now a thriving community. They have a school that is just thriving and up and running. They've employed, they've started local businesses. They've got churches that are just on fire. So it's amazing to see what can happen when you give people an opportunity and the support that they need, to do things themselves, because they don't want charity. They just want an opportunity. So then in 2016 they were released, and then I went back to Kenya in 2017. But I will say I do still have contact with the community. I'm friends on Facebook with some of the people from the
Oh
community, which
yeah.
is hilarious that it's always so funny when they're like, "You find me on Facebook?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's be friends on Facebook." And then like these people who don't have access to electricity and yet they have Facebook accounts.
Somehow. Yep.
It's very hilarious. I love it. And then we still sponsor what we call our Kenyan children there in their community and their families. So we love them. We send them, obviously we communicate with them regularly throughout the year. And then in 2017, I went back, because our church also during this time, we actually launched satellite campuses in Kenya. So we have 2 church campuses in Kenya. One is in an area called Thika,
Hmm.
which is a very urban area outside of Nairobi. And
That's where
then
they have the best pineapple in the world. I walked
yes,
over the 14 Falls there and I have some
yes,
crazy cool pictures. And I remember eating that pineapple and I was like, oh my goodness,
yeah.
this is so
Thika
good.
cool. Thika is a really cool area. It's very it's not obviously as big and city-like as Nairobi, but definitely more of an urban feel. I always like to kind of think of it as like it's like the Durham, because I live in Durham, North Carolina. It's like the Durham of Kenya.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then we also have another campus in Kijongo, which is right next to Thika. So it's very close to Thika. So we have church campuses there, and then I am working with a nonprofit that was started called Street Hope, that is working to empower women who are coming out of the survival sex industry,
Mhm.
or human trafficking as well. And so these are women who have had to make absolutely impossible choices, and it's all about providing them the resources to give them sustainable economic opportunity so that they don't have to make those impossible choices anymore. So it's a country that I love. I love having my Skype meetings with friends over there, and I'm basically counting down the days until I can go back.
Amazing. I'm going to Senegal. So after I lived in Kenya, I lived in Senegal, West Africa, and that's where I met my husband. So we're actually going back there in February. So I get to
Dang.
get my African fix for a little bit.
Yes, yes, it really is. It's just so beautiful, and like there's so much that people like to talk down about third, developing nations and African countries. And I just say, you know what, every time I go back, I learn something new, I gain something new, and I realize how much more they have to offer me than I do to offer them. Um,
Absolutely.
they teach me more about community and what serving others looks like. They teach me more about generosity. They teach me more about slowing down and taking your time to visit with somebody and not being so rushed and hurried about a schedule. There's just so much that they have to offer that I love it. I love it.
It's helped me grow so much. When I was in Kenya, I went as a very naive 20-year-old who just wanted to save the world. And they ended up just completely transforming my life. The people
Yeah.
that I got to work with, it's, unless you've been there, like to sub-Saharan Africa, it's so hard to explain, but
Yeah.
I just came back a completely different person. And
Yep.
incredibly grateful for all those experiences. And I
Yeah.
actually got to meet my sponsored child too
Oh, that's awesome.
when I was over there. And she was probably in the region right by where we were. She was just a few
Yeah.
hours north of Nairobi.
That's amazing.
So cool. Well, let's talk business. So tell us a little bit about your business and what it is that you do exactly with your blog and your podcast.
Yeah. So, a little bit about my blog. I launched it in 2000. Like I said, I launched it in 2007, or I guess in the existence that it is somewhat is now. And it was just something that I started because I wanted to have a creative outlet. I was working in politics, then I was teaching high school, and I was a creative writing major in college. And so I just started this blog as a way to exercise and keep working that muscle. I wanted to be like the Onion. If anybody knows what the Onion is, that
Yeah.
was what my goal was. Obviously, that is not what I'm doing now. But over time, my writing began to shift and it began to look just more like what my life was looking like. I started to just share about struggles I was having, my quarter life crisis, all of those things. And then becoming unemployed and then having 4 jobs to try to make ends meet. And then just the hustle of life. And I started to realize that people were reading it that weren't my dad and my sister. And people started to connect with the things I was writing and the things that I was sharing. And then in 2011, I got engaged. And so I started writing about my wedding planning, and we were on a very tight budget, so I was DIYing a lot of things. And so this was really like right when Pinterest was starting, so nobody really knew what Pinterest was yet. And so I was just kind of doing things as I could. Um and then, yeah, then we got married and I rebranded the blog to what it's called now, Still Being Molly. There's a couple of reasons why it's that name, but it's also a play on my first and last name. My last name is Stillman. And there's also kind of a deeper meaning to it, but I'll save that for another day. But yeah, so I rebranded it in the spring of 2012 to Still Being Molly, and it just really shifted the focus to be more of a life and style blog. And I started out just kind of sharing my outfits. I shared, what makeup I was liking, and just kind of just kept it fun. And then again, as I started to have children and as we started to just experience more of life and got into my 30s, it just grew and grew. And then in 2012 is also when I started to monetize it. I realized that this was something I could do as a business. So I started to treat it as a business. In 2013, I got my LLC. And then by the end of 2013, early 2014, I was able to leave my day job and I was able to do it full time. And so I was really thankful for that opportunity. So now I've been blogging full time for, almost 5 years, which I'm just so thankful for. And it is hard and it's amazing and it's fun and it's challenging and it's wears you down and it builds you up. And it is like such a roller coaster. People think like, oh, you're a blogger for a living. You just like write and take pictures of yourself and put them on the internet, right? And I'm like, yeah, if it was only that easy. It's a huge challenge, but I love it. My focus really now obviously is sharing my life and my kids and experiences, but my big heart and my big passion is obviously, like I was saying earlier, ethical fashion and purchasing with purpose, and elevating the voices of brands and companies that are trying to make a positive impact on the world. Because I have realized more and more as I've gotten older and worked more and more with people in vulnerable situations, they don't want charity, they want a job. And I am so passionate about educating consumers on their voting power with their dollars. You vote every single day by the way you spend your money, every single day. And so by explaining that it's not coming from a place of shame. It's coming from a place of empowerment. But it's not, when you purchase an $8 shirt from Old Navy doesn't blink at that purchase. But if you buy a similar shirt that for a little bit more money from a brand like Elegantees that is employing women who have overcome human trafficking in Nepal, they feel that purchase. They see that purchase. They ship that purchase themselves. And you've provided a job for somebody. And it's not a pity purchase because you're buying a product that is beautiful and well made and handmade and isn't going to fall apart in 3 washes. So yeah, I love to talk about that. That's what I'm really, really passionate about. And so to continue that conversation, in 2016, I launched the podcast Business with Purpose because I wanted to continue that conversation and provide a different platform for business owners. So on the podcast, I interview entrepreneurs, CEOs, nonprofit directors, community leaders, authors, speakers, people who are using their careers, using what they do for a living to change the world in some way. It started out where I thought I was really just going to interview people who own ethical fashion brands. And it has turned into so much more because I realized that there are so many other people who are doing amazing things with their businesses that don't necessarily sell a physical product. I've interviewed optometrists who have an optometry practice, but also provide eye exams and eye care for children in Jamaica. I have interviewed authors and speakers. I interviewed a man who was homeless from the age of 6 to 14.
Wow.
Homeless from the age of, by himself, lived in a dumpster from the age of 6 to 14, and now is traveling. He's now a self-made millionaire, and he travels the country helping other people become. His goal is to make other people become millionaires because he believes that good people with lots of money can do lots of good things.
Yes.
But his story is just incredible. And so I've met all these amazing people who have seen an opportunity, they see a need, and they decide to fill it and pursue their passion outside of just what they're, outside of just some volunteer work. They really decide to throw their whole heart into it. So that's a little bit of a long story, but so that's what I do on the blog and the podcast, and I love it.
I love your story because it didn't happen overnight. Like, you started this in 2007 and you didn't start monetizing until 2014. So think about just all the blog posts that you did and all the consistency and value that you added. So, I mean, for people that are like, oh, I did this for 2 months and it's not working, like, stick with it, be consistent. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, it's so funny. And I think about it all the time. And I have to give myself kind of reality checks and frequent reminders how I am right now where I wish where in 2012, 2013, 2014, I couldn't have dreamt of the goals that I am currently achieving now, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I remember for so long, my goal was just to be able to work and do this full time and provide enough income that, I could leave my day job and bring in enough income to support my family in that way. And now I'm surpassing those initial goals, but then I still sometimes fight that, but I'm not to where I want to be. And so, but then I'm like, wait a second, but I am where I wanted to be in 2012.
Yeah.
So I have to give myself that reality check. And I realized that, like, on the days that I'm really frustrated and on the days that I am so tired and I don't think I can do it anymore, and I get frustrated with a particular situation, or, I find myself falling into that comparison trap and I'm looking at what somebody else is doing, which I fight all the time. We all do. I just remind myself that, like, people who are successful because they never gave up.
Mm-hmm.
You never see a successful person who is successful because they gave up and they quit. They are successful because they kept going.
Yes.
And so I just have to push through that. And I have to just remember that tomorrow's a new day and I'm going to just continue. And if I try something and it doesn't work, that's okay. I can try something different. The more that I try something and the more that I fail, the more that I am able to learn from those failures and move on and improve myself.
I love it. So let's talk ethical brands a little bit. So for
Yeah.
someone who's just starting out and they want to do some more shopping conscientiously, that's the word.
Consciously.
Yeah, that one. So how would they start? What should they look for?
That is a great question. And I actually, it's funny that you say this. I actually have, this is one of the most common questions that I get. And so, not to like self plug, but if you actually go and listen to, I think it's episode 110 of my podcast, I actually break down how I decide, how to know if a brand is ethical. And then actually the episode that comes out tomorrow, well, by the time this airs, it will have already come out. So episode 120 is how to shop ethically on a budget. So
Ooh.
that's also a really common question that I get. But just to kind of, the thing that I always tell people when you're starting out is it can feel really overwhelming. And so when you feel overwhelmed, a lot of times you just shut down and you're just like, oh, well, if I'm overwhelmed, I'm just not going to do anything. And so you don't make any changes. But it's kind of like exercise. Like you don't get to a point where you're out of shape or you feel like you need to go to the gym and you get overwhelmed so you just don't go. Well, then it just gets worse. You
Mhm.
start somewhere. You go for a walk. Like you don't become a CrossFitter overnight.
Yeah.
Like you go for a walk and then maybe you go for a jog and then you increase your distance and all these kinds of things. Like it's very similar to that in a lot of ways. So I always tell people like start with one category of things that you purchase. Maybe you're a shoe person. Okay. You love shoes. Just start, change all your purchasing when it comes to shoes to ethical shoe brands. There are a ton that are amazing. You have the Root Collective, you have Nisolo, you have Veja, you have all of these amazing shoe companies that are making adorable, stylish, trendy shoes that are handmade. They're well made. They're going to last you forever. And they are empowering artisans all over the world. And they're using, sustainable fabrics and they're using sustainable dyes and they're using sustainable practices. So that could be where you start. Maybe it's you love accessories, you love jewelry. So instead of going to Forever 21 and buying, cheap costume jewelry that breaks after one or two wears, save up some money and maybe start shopping from brands like Noonday Collection or Vibella Jewelry or Starfish Project or, all these other amazing jewelry companies that are employing artisans all over the world. Their jewelry is gorgeous, gorgeous. And it's jewelry that people are going to literally stop you. And I say this because it happens to me all the time. People will stop me and say, oh my gosh, where did you get that necklace? Or where did you get those earrings? People are going to stop you and ask you about them. And then you can not only tell them about where you got it, but then you can tell them about the story behind it.
Mhm.
It has a bigger story. So if you're on a budget, the most ethical way to shop, and it's also the most affordable way to shop, is to buy secondhand, buy consignment. So maybe you love thrifting. Thrifting is a super ethical way to shop. There's also, if you hate the idea of going to a thrift store and, combing through racks, there's so many amazing consignment and thrift shops online, like ThreadUp and Poshmark and Relove and Mercari. I can't ever pronounce that one. Schoola. I mean, goodness, there's a dozen. It's amazing. So, and that is a way that you can shop ethically at a more affordable price. So I always just say start with one category and just make that conscious decision and then go from there. And you'll realize very quickly that the more that you get into shopping ethically, the more that it actually becomes fun. You love learning about brands. I love researching new brands. And if I come across a particular category, that I never even thought about before, like it just occurred to me in the last couple of months. I'm like, how are my toothbrushes made? And so I've started like looking into, okay, well, where can I buy toothbrushes that maybe are made with more sustainable materials and aren't loaded with toxins? And you know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things that it builds on itself. So I'm obviously not telling everybody you need to go and change the kind of toothbrush you buy, but I'm just saying like over time, this has been 8-year 8+ year process for me. It started for me in 2011 and I've kind of grown from there. So yeah, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
No, I like it. I think it's good to start small so it doesn't
yeah,
overwhelm you.
exactly.
I remember one of the first companies I started buying from was 10,000 Villages, like way back when I
Yes,
was
they
in
are like the
college.
OG.
I know this was back in college. This was a long time ago. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I'm getting old. But yeah, I mean, anytime you do like gift shopping or something, you can get such unique presents for people from those places too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They just have, yeah. I mean, it's something that's, like you said, it's unique. It's something that not everybody else is going to have. Yeah. It's amazing.
Love. So, how do you incorporate your faith into your business?
Oh man, in everything. I'm not shy about my faith. I because my faith is where I am where I am because of Jesus. And I'm not shy to say that. I was not always a believer. I didn't become a believer until 2010. And I know both sides of walking a life without Christ and walking a life with Christ. And I would not go back to walking a life without him, even for a second. And so, I mean, I realize not everybody has that story and not everybody has that literal come to Jesus moment. But I had this is a whole nother story for another day, but I hit rock bottom in 2010 and I realized that I was trying to do things on my own for so long. And I was fighting it and I was fighting it and I wanted nothing to do with Jesus. I wanted nothing to do with the church. I did not believe in God. I just thought there's no way that this God in heaven that people talk about could let these things happen to me and my family. Yeah. And I realized that those are all lies straight from the enemy. And I kind of had that point where I just said, okay, God, if you're real, I'm going to just try this out because I've been trying to do things my way for so long. I'm going to try to do things your way. And my life has literally not been the same since. Now, I'm not saying that life all of a sudden got easy because we know that that's not true. But my perspective has changed for sure. I have a heavenly perspective and, an eternal perspective. And I have a hope and a peace that I'm filled with that can literally only be explained by Jesus. We have experienced some personal tragedy in the past year. We lost 2 babies in the second trimester.
Oh,
Our son Elijah Timothy, we lost in February of 2018 at 17 weeks,
wow.
and we lost our son the Malachi Jude at 15 weeks in June. Both completely unexpected, there's no explanation, and it wrecked me to my core. And I had to make the conscious decision: do I run away from God or do I run to him? And I know what it's like to run away from him because that's what got me to my rock bottom. And so instead I decided to run towards him, and I really am truly, the only thing I can say is that I have a peace about me that can only be explained by Jesus. So to answer your question of like, how do I incorporate my faith into my business? I mean, little things like, my life verse is a verse, 1 Peter 4:10, which says that each one of you has received a gift, that God has given you a gift, and you are to be a good steward of that gift, as an exhibit of God's grace in its various forms. That God's grace gives us these gifts, and we are to steward and use those gifts to serve others. And that is my life verse. It's on my license plate, but it's also at the bottom of every single blog post. It's at the bottom of my email signature. So it is something that it's in my Instagram bio. It is the thing that I talk about all the time because I believe that the gifts that I have been given, the gift of writing, the gift of creativity, the gift of sharing my story with others, all of those things, I believe that those are gifts from God that I'm supposed to steward well and use them to serve others. So I think all the time about when I'm creating content, is this something that is serving my community in some way? And yes, it might seem very silly and frivolous, if I'm sharing something like a recipe or if I'm sharing an outfit idea. But I think about like, maybe there's a mom who doesn't feel like, or feels like she's lost her identity in her kids, and she hasn't put on real pants in 6 months, and she hasn't taken the time to take care of herself, putting on the oxygen mask before you put it on your children kind of situation. She feels lost. And so maybe this particular style is something that she likes and she sees is easy and something that will make her feel good, and feel as beautiful as she already is. If I'm sharing a recipe, is this a recipe that has, real nutritious ingredients, that is quick and easy for busy parents on the go? That's something that they can make that is delicious and healthy for their families. That's a way that I can serve them in some way. So I think about those things every single time that I create content. And then I just, if I'm sharing things, I don't shy away from talking about my faith. And even if it's somebody that is not a believer, I feel like I try to share things in a way that is non-threatening. I don't know if that sounds, how that sounds, but, I want people to know that, like, it's not this like stuffy, you can't sit with us church.
Right.
I share what God has done in my life. I don't shame anyone else for their beliefs. But I want people to know what having the peace of Christ can really be like. And so my goal is just, if somebody just asks me a question, and I've had so many readers say, you know what, I haven't been to church since I was a kid and I'm so far from God, or I grew up of a different faith, or I'm an atheist and I have questions. And I respect their beliefs, and I believe everybody's different. But if I have the opportunity to share my faith with somebody who doesn't share that faith, I love that opportunity and I love those conversations. And they're never in a judgmental or hurtful way. And we can, if there are times where maybe we'll disagree, but sometimes you'd be surprised when you just come at it from a position of love and just sharing your own faith and your own story, and not in this like, you're gonna die and like
Yeah.
this like fire and brimstone stuff. I'm just like, that doesn't win anybody over.
No.
Like, what did Jesus do? And when we look at the life of Jesus, when he came into contact with Gentiles, he came into contact with people who didn't believe in him. What did he do? He just loved them and he served them, and then they left changed. Like, no one came into contact with Jesus and didn't leave changed. And so that's my goal, is to just share my faith with other people, and Jesus can do the rest. It's not my job to try and change them. That's not my job. It's just to share my experience. So I hope that answers your question.
No, totally, totally. And I love your life verse that you share. So I actually have scripture and quotes taped to my desk.
Yeah.
And one of them says, "What did you do with what I gave you? What did you do with your life? All the gifts, talents, opportunities, energy, relationships, and resources God gave you. Did you spend them on yourself, or did you use them for the purposes God made you for?"
Yes.
So talk to us about tithing and how that's impacted your business. I actually watched that video of you.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Well, how much time do we have? I mean, that is a big part, honestly, of my testimony. So when I first came to know, well, okay, I'll go back just a little bit. In the summer of 2008, I was a year out of college. I was working as a high school English teacher, making $30,000 a year. And I had a nervous breakdown, an actual anxiety attack, full blown, because I was over $36,000 in consumer credit card debt.
Oof.
And I was so far over my head, I could not, I could not breathe financially. I couldn't even make my minimum payments. It was a mess. So I began a journey of working to get out of debt. But it was rough. It was rough. I did not get into debt overnight, so I was not going to get out of debt overnight. I was in some big, big trouble. And I had been working that way from June of 2008 until the fall of 2010. And the fall of 2010 is actually when I started attending church. I was going with this guy I happened to be dating, who is now my husband. And our pastor, it was like the third or fourth Sunday that I was attending, and our pastor did this sermon on tithing. And I had literally never even heard the term. I grew up Catholic light, like I would go to Catholic mass on
Yeah.
kind of thing. So, and they, I mean, goodness knows, I'd never heard a sermon on tithing ever. I didn't even know what the word meant. And so this concept just kind of blew my mind. And it really was just, our pastor was just coming at it from a place of, this is how you honor God with your finances. And this is about bringing your first fruits into the storehouse. And this is the way that, when we shift the way we see money, and we realize that our, sorry, when we realize that our money was given to us by God. Yes, maybe we earned it, but through whatever opportunities that God has placed into us, when we see that these are resources that God has given us, that we are just returning back the first fruits, that first 10% of our income to God, so that he can do more with that, that 90% through us than we can do with our 100% on our own. And so this was just a completely foreign concept to me. But it's funny when people kind of come to faith in Christ, I find that a lot of people, it sort of goes in like, they turn their heart over to Jesus, and then they start to turn their life over to Jesus, and then like they grip their wallet with like white knuckle hands. For me, it was like the complete opposite. It was like, okay, I'm starting to realize this whole Jesus thing. But because I was in such a rough financial situation, and this isn't like prosperity gospel stuff, it was just really about like, how are you stewarding your money? And I realized I had been not stewarding my money well at all. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to give this tithing thing a shot. And so I wrote a check for $50, like a physical written check. And that was the scariest $50 I've ever spent, because you have to realize, like, I was at a point where I did not have money for groceries. Like, I was like, I don't know where this money is going to come from, because I don't have money. I'm so broke. I'm, not making anything at my job. At that point, I was working for a radio station here in North Carolina. I was making $27,000 a year, which is not, after taxes, my take home pay was nada. And then my debt payment was $808 a month.
Wow.
$808 a month. That's what I was paying towards my debt. And then when you factor in my rent and car insurance and electricity and just bills, that was another probably $900 a month just in basic expenses. And that left like negative $100 for food and gas. So, that first $50 was terrifying. And so then that was the point in the relationship with my now husband where I sat down and I told him about my financial situation. We had conversations about it. And he actually helped me create a more strict budget. And then when he saw, it's funny because he has been a Christian his whole life. And so tithing is just something that like you do. That's what you do. And it was like no big deal to him. But when we looked down, I said, look, this is something I really feel like I'm supposed to be doing. And he was like, look, I know, but like the numbers just don't make sense. Like, he's like, you don't have money for food. And so I was like, but I really want to do this. I'll pick up another job. And he's like, how about this? We'll set this up. So you're going to be tithing. I'll buy your groceries. My husband's pretty amazing. He was just my friend at the time. So he's like, I'll pay for your groceries. And I was like, really? You will? You'll do that? And so he started paying for my groceries, but I started tithing. Within a month and a half, I got a bonus at work. Within 6 months, I got a raise. And then exactly a year later, when I started tithing, I got a job offer from a job I did not even apply for. They reached out to me, said, we like the work that you do. We want to bring you on. They offered me a starting salary that was exactly double what I had been making the year before.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was I remember the moment that I opened up that offer letter from that job and I looked up and it was just like, I heard God say, see, I just asked you to trust me and to just be a good steward of what I gave you. And now I'm going to bless you. And again, this is not, I always like to be very careful because I don't ever want people to think this is just like prosperity gospel stuff. It's like, oh, start tithing and you'll get a salary twice what you make. No, because I mean, granted, I have heard story after story after story of people just being taken care of when you just are faithful with your finances. But in other, I've just seen blessings in so many other areas too, from, not just financial blessings, but blessings in restored relationships, blessings in just the area of, just opportunities that I've been given to minister to other people. I mean, it's just, I could go on. It's all about where your heart is. I mean, there's that verse where, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So store up treasures in heaven. And it's like, are we putting all of our worth in the things that we own here on this earth, or are we being a steward of what we've been given so that we can be a blessing to others, and have an eternal impact on the lives of other people? So, it's an area I'm super passionate about. I even to this day, I mean, we're debt free now. I paid off my debt actually a year and a half early. I was supposed to not be debt free till about 2013 or 2014. We paid it off I paid off that final check in the beginning of March of 2012. And we remain debt free other than our mortgage. I mean, and God he has provided in so many ways. Like I said, not just financially, but just in so many ways. He has just been there every single step of the way. And even when hardships come, like losing our babies this year, we have just felt God's presence every single step of the way. And it's truly indescribable.
Whew, you got me over here. I just have a smile on my face and I'm like, amen. So cool to hear your story. And I love that. Love. What's the best book you've read?
Oh, the best book I've read. Whew. Let's see. Recently, this is okay. So I'll give you two answers. One is more of like just a memoir. One is more like a life-changing kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
My memoir answer is probably my favorite memoir. I love nonfiction. I mean, I do like some fiction, but in general, I just prefer nonfiction. I love memoirs. It's called The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. They made it into a movie last year. I know that the movie wasn't as good as the book. But really the book is unbelievable. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, amazing, incredible memoir, will just like make you laugh, cry some more. It's unreal. And then best book I've read this year is actually a book called Free of Me by Sharon Miller. And actually Sharon and I have become good friends here. It turns out, it's funny because I had heard of her, I'd read her book, and then turns out she lives like in a neighborhood over from me. So we became friends through the internet. And then I was like, wait a second, we live really close together. And so we've now become good friends. And so I'm not just recommending her book because she's my friend. I'm recommending it because it's that good. It's called Free of Me: Why Life is Better When It's Not About You. And let me just say that, man or woman, this is a message that people need to hear. And it is just such an incredible book. I highlighted and like took notes and underlined, I want to say like 75% of the book because it's just so good. Cannot recommend it enough. I've like loaned out my copy to probably 8 or 9 people at this point I'm like, I'm going to need that back though, because it has all my notes in it. Yes, it's just, it's so good.
Amazing. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
That's a good question. This is just the first answer that comes to mind. So I'm just going to say it because I don't know if this is the best answer, but it's the one that came to mind. I had a reader who has been reading my blog for years. She is probably one of my longest readers. And she was somebody who was very far from God. I would think at even one point she identified as atheist or agnostic. And I've never met her in person, but she's just one of those people. She has been a faithful reader, commenter, just super encouraging, really nice person. So we've just kind of become kind of friends through the internet. And I would just respond to her comments, and we would email back and forth a couple times. So she started reading my blog probably in 2010, maybe 2009, long time. Well, this past May, she sent me one of the most impactful emails I've ever received from a reader. And she basically outlined how my content and my blog and me just sharing my story of coming to faith in Christ has impacted her over the years. And she said, I just see the way you live your life, and I see the way that you, how following Jesus has changed you for the better. And I see all these things. Well, I just wanted to let you know that I started attending church in my area because of you. And I'm getting baptized next week. And I
Oh.
sobbed like a little baby. And I just thought, like, if that's it, like, if there's one person who came to faith in Jesus and got baptized because I write about my life and fashion, what? Like, I was like, that can be explained by nothing other than God. And that just reminded me that this is why I do what I do. And yes, to some people, it might seem like a strange job. It might seem like you can't have an impact with something like a life and style blog. But I now know that to be not true, that you can have an impact. And so and I'm sure maybe maybe there are other stories like that they just haven't even emailed me to tell it. But I mean, I've received so many emails from readers about how this or that has impacted them, or this or that has strengthened their relationship with their spouse, or strengthened their relationship with a sibling, or maybe a broken friendship or something like that. But when I got that email about the fact that she started attending church and got baptized, I was wrecked. So that to me, at the end of the day, if I get to see her in heaven, and I know that I had a little tiny part in that, yeah, that would be my answer.
So cool. Well, what's next for you?
Man, 2019 is the year that I am trying to work hard or smarter, not harder.
Mm.
So I'm trying to simplify some things. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. But I just really felt a shift in my business this year, because I was, just with having both losses and not being able to work as much as I had hoped. I was really, I think I realized what was important and what was working well and what wasn't. So I'm just trying to build off of that. And then also writing my book. I actually got approached by a publisher in the summer of 2017 to write a book, and I had started it. And then we lost Elijah. And so I kind of tabled it. And so I am praying to pick that back up in 2019 and actually write it. So that's the big goal. So I don't know. It's a long process, and I feel God has been kind of, rewriting it along the way. So I have no idea when it will get finished, when it will get published, but I just know that that's something I'm supposed to continue to work on. So that's the big goal. And now if I say it out loud, like on a podcast, that means I have to do it.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to happen. Well, where can we connect with you?
My blog is stillbeingmolly.com. And my podcast is Business with Purpose, and you can find it on any podcasting app. And then on social media, I'm at Still Being Molly on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all those things.
Well, Molly, I adore your heart and who you
Thank
are.
you.
So thank you so much for just sharing, being an open book and sharing everything with us. I know I definitely appreciated learning from you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This was such a pleasure.